Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the result in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race in which Susan Crawford, the Democrat and progressive candidate, beat Brad Schimmel, the Republican candidate and the MAGA candidate, indeed, who took to campaigning in a MAGA hat and all but promising Wisconsin voters he would do Trump's bidding on the highest court in the state and its implications. The implications here are largely political, and as you know, I focus typically on the law, but they're very intertwined here. And let me start by explaining why and then double back to the results. Okay. Wisconsin, paradigmatic swing state, divided government between legislature and governor. Supreme Court 4-3 was perennially 4-3 or more Republican for many years, and then switched a few years back, and Crawford retains that advantage. And in terms of going forward, and now, come to the legal part. First, it's going to be huge for redistricting and figuring out the electoral map of the state. And Wisconsin being so narrowly divided, such a purple state, Trump won in 2024, Biden won in 2020. The districting really matters and how things come out for both the down ticket races, as it were, and the up ticket races. But also in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court is going to be really big issues of voting rights and abortion and a few other big ticket items, all of which made this by a large margin, the most expensive state Supreme Court race in history, some $61 million. But second thing, many would say the first thing that made it so important, 25 million of those dollars were spent by Elon Musk personally, who spent days campaigning for the Republican. I have to say, I find, there are many ways in which he wears out his welcome very quickly. But when he is getting so involved and jumping up and down as if he knows the first thing he's talking about judicial races and spouting conservative bromides about judicial activism and the like, he is a very rich and very know-nothing guy. And so it's significant that it seems, if anything, he was a negative factor. So he spends $25 million. He does this trick of passing out two $1 million checks that are a patent effort to basically get votes for the Republican candidate. He's there for days and dominates the news. And Crawford wins by essentially the same margin as the last time around, 10 points versus 11 points, suggesting that Musk's presence is zero, or maybe less than zero, because recall, Trump wins in 2024. And so a decisive victory by Crawford here seems to suggest, and Democrats around the country, I think, are taking this way, as a real shot in the arm and indication of discontent with Trump's agenda and agenda, if that's the right word, his complete wrecking ball approach, inflicting so much misery on so many people. And also of Musk, who, not coincidentally, I think we have leaks in the press this morning that Trump has told 3 people that Musk will be moving on pretty soon. This absolute savior of government who's brought efficiency everywhere and is extolled at the speech before Congress and every cabinet meeting, nevertheless is the equivalent of spending more time with his family. He's going to be moving along to take care of his businesses. So the writing is on the wall, I think, that Musk is really a liability to the Republican Party, but is just part and parcel of a whole, complete tsunami in government that has been characterized by arch politicization, arch antipathy toward, and discriminatory selecting out of perceived liberals or even more Trump opponents, and arch ignorance. All these things done without the slightest idea or apparent care of the actual results they are going to put into play. So the law part, really important here going forward in a lot of cases, and the narrow 4-3 margin on the court abides. But while I focus on that, it's too big a political result. This is the election of the year. There were 2 in Florida also yesterday where Trump candidates won House seats. It's a big deal given how narrow the margin in the House is. Nevertheless, they won them by a fair bit less than expected, like, the replacing a candidate who won by 33% and winning by 10%. So that also is essentially an indication that some measure of skepticism and jaundice is setting in vis-a-vis Trump and his agenda. But had Minnesota gone the other way, and especially with the candidate, it's not as a guy who cares about judging and honesty and judges calling it straight. You could even say judicial conservatism properly understood. The notion of this political hack with a MAGA hat donning a Supreme Court robe was really repulsive to me. So Crawford's win has to be taken as a good day for the rule of law, specifically in Wisconsin, and more generally in the sense that it's some signs of life in the Democratic Party, some signs of repudiation of Trump, who is himself the biggest threat to the rule of law probably in presidential history. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.